What's up, garden nerds? Today I'm gonna give you 7 tips for building a healthy soil so that you can grow anything in your yard. It's gonna be awesome. Come on, let's go. All right, guys, I'm gonna give you 7 tips to build healthy soil, because that's what it's all about. If you don't have healthy soil, if you don't have good quality soil, then forget about everything else. You're not gonna grow anything. It doesn't matter what it is. So let's talk about those 7 tips. I'm gonna give them to you now, and then I'll go into detail about each one. Tip number 1, don't till. Tip number 2, compost. Tip number 3, use cover crops and diversify and rotate those cover crops. Tip number 4, mulch. Use mulch. Tip number 5, chop and drop. Tip number 6, no chemicals, no chemical synthetic fertilizers. And tip number 7 is test your soil so you know what to add to your soil. Okay, so those are the 7 tips. We're gonna go into each detail about those tips. But first, let's talk a little bit about soil and what makes up a healthy soil. Okay, so a soil that is ideal and best for plant growth consists of 50% solid material and then 50% open pore space. Let's talk about that a little bit more. The solid material is primarily made up of minerals. That's about 47%. That's the things that your trees like to feed on. And then the other 3% of the solid material is organic material. And then the other 50%, the open pore space, is about 25% air and 25% water. And increasing organic material helps the soil's water holding capacity. More organic material, generally, the better your soil can hold onto that water. Arizona's soil typically contains very low organic material, and a lot of the desert Southwest has very low organic material. This is because if you look around the desert, there's not a lot of lush trees with huge leaves and matter that falls to the ground to give the soil that organic material. And then plus the high temperatures breaks down organic material really quickly. So any organic material that does fall to the ground quickly breaks down by the high temperatures. So the soil is really lacking in organic material. But if you can add organic material to the soil, this gives the soil good structure, which allows for water and air and roots to move easily through the soil, which is what plants want to be able to grow properly. You can think about it this way. When you put water on the ground, if the water doesn't penetrate, roots probably aren't going to penetrate. If water penetrates easily and can get deep down into the ground, well, that means there's a lot of open pore space there, and the roots can easily penetrate and get deep down into the ground. So organic material helps create an optimal soil. The more organic material you add to the soil, the more living things you have in your soil, which is what you want. If you go out into your yard and you see bugs and creepy crawlers and worms and things like that that gross you out, don't automatically think, how can I kill this? You do not want to do that. You want living things in your soil. They take that organic material, they feed on that organic material, they poop out that organic material, and the leftovers there, it breaks down, and then you have humus, which is what remains after most of the material has decomposed. And that stuff is pure gold for your plants. That stuff is pure gold for your soil. That's what you want. And you get that by adding organic material and allowing things to live in your soil and break that organic material down. So all of this is creating what's called a good soil, air, water relationship. You need all of those things to have a good soil. So now let's go back through each of these 7 tips in detail so you can understand why I'm giving you each of these 7 tips. So tip number 1 is do not till. You see it in farming, you see it in people in their own backyards. Every time they go to plant a new garden, what do? They think they have to till. No, you don't want to till. You don't want to mess up all that life that's in your soil. Every time you disturb the soil, you're killing life, and life is what helps create a healthy soil. So rather than till, leave it alone. Add on top, add on top, add on top. Every year, every time you go to plant a garden, add on top. Don't destroy what's there, that layer of topsoil. That is what your plants want. That is gold. Every time you till, you're destroying that, and you're not giving your plants all the food that they need and that they want. So stop tilling, just add on top, and over time, all of that stuff that you add on top will break down. Don't disturb the soil. Don't till. Guys, while you're watching this video and enjoying it, please hit the subscribe button below I really appreciate it. Tip number 2 is compost. Guys, compost is basically all that organic material that we talked about that your soil wants. Compost everything. Not only does it help because it's not filling up our landfills, but you can use and recycle all your normal everyday stuff. Banana peels, rotted vegetables, rotted fruit, basically anything organic that you eat, you can put down right back into the soil. Now, a lot of people have compost bins, compost piles. I don't go through that process. Instead, I literally just throw that stuff under my trees into the soil, and I let it compost and break down right there. But that's how you can get good quality organic material into your soil, is just by composting. So if you're not composting, compost. And if you don't want to go through that yourself, well, buy compost. Every time I plant a new fall garden, like right here, I go and I get new compost and I put it on top. I don't till, I just put it on top and allow it to break down. Tip number 3 was use cover crops and diversify and rotate those cover crops. A good, healthy soil always has something growing on it. A lot of people think you grow things and it pulls the nutrients out of the soil. Well, it does to some degree, but it's also helping to build a healthy soil. It's putting nutrients back into the soil. You don't want to leave the ground barren. You don't want to leave it uncovered. Think of cover crops as armor or protection for the soil. What cover crops are doing is it's pulling that carbon from the air, which is not good in the air. We don't want in the air. It's pulling that carbon from the air and it's putting it into the soil, which is where it belongs and is what healthy soil wants. It wants that carbon from the air. So if you constantly have something covering the soil, you constantly get that process happening, pulling carbon from the air, putting it into the soil, building a healthy soil. It needs to be an ongoing process. More and more farmers are doing this. They're never letting their soil go bare. Even during the off season, they plant some type of cover crop to continue to feed and build a healthy soil. You should do the same even in your own urban backyard. Tip number 4 was mulch. Guys, mulch is extremely important. You need to be mulching all the time in your garden beds, under your fruit trees, everywhere. That mulch is doing a number of things. The first thing, the most important thing, is it's organic material that is slowly, constantly breaking down and feeding your trees, feeding the soil, which then feeds the trees. The second thing, here in Arizona in the desert Southwest, is it is conserving water. The more mulch you have, and you should have at least 12 inches of mulch, the less water evaporation you have. It's basically insulating the soil and keeping that water in there, which keeps the soil happier, keeps the soil full of life, keeps water going to the roots of your vegetables and your trees, and it's helping that soil, air, water combination that we want. So if you're not mulching, especially in the desert Southwest, you need to mulch. And I'm not talking about sprinkling some wood chips here, some grass here. You need to stack it high, not right up against the trunks of trees, but you need to stack it high, and you need to keep it high all the time because it's constantly going to be breaking down. Tip number 5 is chop and drop. What does this mean? Every time you trim anything in your backyard, if you look around here in my backyard, I have leaves, especially from this bamboo, that falls constantly. I trim constantly because things get overgrown. It's like a jungle in my backyard. I have a green barrel that the trash man would come and pick up every Tuesday. I rarely, if ever, use that green barrel. What do I do instead? Anytime I trim anything, shrubs, trees, bushes, bamboo, pull out fall garden, anything, I put it right back into the ground, right under the tree, and I let it break down over time. What is that doing? I keep going back to it. All of this goes back to having an organic matter in your soil and allowing it to break down. You don't have to spend lots of money and energy to build a healthy soil. It's as simple as chopping and trimming your trees and shrubs and bushes and letting it fall to the ground. That's a good start. That can help building a healthy soil right away without going and buying expensive products, expensive fertilizers, expensive compost. Just chop and drop. Put it right back into the ground. That's how nature does it. If you go out to the forest, you see all the leaves, pine needles, everything just falls to the ground and it slowly breaks down over time and it feeds the trees. You don't see anybody out there spreading fertilizer. All you see is leaves falling, composting, breaking down, giving organic matter to the soil. Tip number 6 for building a healthy soil is no chemicals. Guys, I cannot stand chemicals. I cannot stand synthetic fertilizers. Real organic fertilizers, they're feeding the soil, which builds a healthy soil over time, and then that soil feeds the trees. Synthetic or fake fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, they're just feeding the roots right away, and they're slowly killing the soil. So you may say, well, I use this fake fertilizer from Home Depot or wherever, and boom, I had instant success in my vegetable garden, or my tree grew like crazy, I had tons of fruit. Okay, well, it may be a short-term fix, but long-term, it is destroying the life of your soil, which long-term will destroy your trees, your vegetables, your shrubs, and everything to that nature. So stop using synthetic fertilizer to get quick results. Play the long-term game, use organic fertilizers, and build that soil over time. Once you've built that soil over time and you have a healthy soil, you can grow almost anything. It becomes very, very easy to grow things once you have that healthy soil, but you're not gonna get that healthy soil with synthetic fertilizers. Tip number 7, and the last tip for building a healthy soil, is test your soil. Guys, this is something that I'm going to do here in the next week or so, but if you can test your soil, and there's a number of places you can do it. If you Google it, you can find some local, some national. You basically get a sample of your soil and send it in, and you can do it in a number of different spots in your yard. Then you get those lab results back, and you know what your soil is lacking in. Then you can go and buy an organic fertilizer that has whatever your soil is lacking, and you can add that to your soil. But if you don't know, if you don't test it, you don't know what it's lacking, so you don't know what to add. Once your soil is in optimal condition, you can essentially grow anything. Growing food becomes very easy and simple at that point. All right, guys, that is it. Thank you for watching. Like I said in the beginning of the video, building your soil is extremely important. If you haven't focused on that, stop focusing on all the cool, crazy, awesome trees and shrubs and vegetable gardens you want to grow, and first focus on building the soil. Build the soil and great results will come. Thank you for watching as always. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. I would appreciate it. And as always, in the comments below, ask me any questions, give me suggestions as to videos you want to see, and I'm happy to take those suggestions and make those videos. Thanks for watching, guys.